Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm colouring up this beautiful Red Riding Hood from Lynn. I hope you guys enjoy this one. Let's pop in and have a look. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm colouring this beautiful image by Lynn from her colouring book, the new colouring book Princesses, or Fairy Tale Princesses I think it is. I have done a flip through of this book. If you'd like to have a look at that, I'll pop it in a link in the description below. Also in the description below I'll put all my social media links, Facebook, Twitter, Vero, Instagram, all of those things, so pop in and check those out as well while you're in there. Also too, I'll put a link to the digital file and the Amazon copy of this book as well, so you can check out what I've actually purchased and where the image comes from. So I'm colouring this one up with Copic markers, and I'm using Express It blending card. I've printed it on an A5 size, a little bit smaller, or half the size of an A4 of course, but because there was a fair bit of detail in there, I decided to do it a little bit smaller, just so that it doesn't take me as long to do for you guys, so you can get the most benefit from it without having to sit and watch for hours on end. Now, in saying that, this video is a long video. It is real time, so I haven't sped it up or anything, which means that there is bits and pieces where I sit and fiddle with things, so if you're already ahead and moving along really quickly, just fast forward the video, because guys, I don't want to bore you guys. I want this to be fun, and I want you guys to learn something from it as I go. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do so, because you will get notifications when I upload new videos. Also, when I go live, you'll get a notification of that as well, which I'm trying to do once a week, but it is hard sometimes with juggling kids and work and things like that as well. So hopefully I get in there at least once a week for you. So I've just done the skin shadow colors with E04, and I'm coming over the top of that now with some E11, so just sort of blending that out, flicking the marker out towards the highlighted areas now to blend that previous color in, and also to extend this area out a little bit further. So we want to try and create a nice smooth transition between the colors, and also create a little bit of depth and highlights through the skin. Also, while I'm popping these colours in now, I'll just let you know that I do have a colour conversion chart available to patrons, so pop over to Patreon and have a look at that. The link is in the description below. It is a small fee per month to be able to get access to all of the colour chart that I do, so I may do up to 6 or 7 tutorials in a month, so every time I do a color conversion chart, you would have access to that for that small fee. So it isn't each time you get a color list, it is per month, so it is a great idea to pop over and have a look. And the only reason that I do charge that small fee is just for my time in putting together that chart for you and popping it up on Patreon. So I'm swapping over now to E21, and I'm just extending this color further out past the previous color, and making sure that I sort of go over the top of the previous colors and they're blended in nice and smooth. And I kind of flick my marker out towards the highlight section again, just to make it nice and soft and make those edges a little bit furry, so that the next color will go over the top nicely. So just coming back to those color charts, they are for a conversion, so from Copic markers to Prismacolor and Polychromos pencils. So it is a little bit easier for you if you don't have Copic markers. You'll be able to have a look at that and perhaps do a pencil version. Now obviously I can't match the colors exactly, but I've done my best to sort of work those out for you. If you have any trouble with any of that, just let me know as well, and I can help you run through those. I haven't done any other pencil conversions at this stage because I haven't found any other than the Caran d'Ache pencils, which I don't have all of them, so I can't do a conversion because obviously I can't compare the colours to the other colours that I've got. But eventually that will happen, hopefully, one day, maybe. If I don't keep spending money on colouring books and watercolours. Also Copic markers, of course. But anyway, I'm coming in now over the top of the previous colours with E00, and I'm just extending this further out over the highlight areas. There's only a small section left of area now that I haven't coloured over, and when I have sort of coloured over those areas, I've made sure I've flicked my marker in so they're nice and feathery as well, so that we don't have that defined line between the colours. So a lot of people have asked me how I don't get lines through there. So all I'm actually doing is just flicking that marker out into those whiter areas and sort of fluffing off the edge so it's not one straight line. And I'm making sure that I do go over the top of those previous colors and blend them out as well. So I'm coming in now with some E000 and I'm going over the top of the entire skin now to blend all that out nice and smooth. And I'm going to do a second layer just to make sure I've still got that depth in there as well. Okay, so now I'm going to do that second layer. So I'm starting with the darkest color, which was E04, and I'm just going to go in and outline all of those shadow areas again with this one. So I wanted to mention too that Hannah Lynn has her VIP lounge. If you haven't heard of that, it's a new program that Hannah Lynn started. She charges $2 a month to be a member of the VIP lounge, and within that you get to join the Facebook group, and she also gives a free coloring page a month. So these coloring pages are exclusive to her VIP members, so she's not posting these to the general public or selling them. She is only giving these away exclusively to her VIPs. So something to have a look at. I've seen a couple of really cute images come out so far, so I'm really excited to continue on that journey and see what she comes out with over the next few months and time to come. So if you don't know how to get to the description, just underneath this video there is a little arrow on the right hand side pointing down. You click on that little arrow, it opens up the whole description there. Sometimes it will have a read more section. Make sure you click on that so you can see the whole thing. It is quite long because we've got all of our legal stuff to go through, as well as all the links and things like that that I'm posting for you. So make sure you have a look at that. I'm using E11 now to blend out the E04, and I'm just going in and going over the top of that previous color and just extending this further out towards those highlight sections again. So I'm repeating the same steps as we previously did. I'm just creating a little bit more depth and highlights through there. So we're continuing to build up this color. I've got E21 and I'm just going to do the same steps again. So I'm just going over the previous colors and extending this further out. I just noticed too that underneath her bow I've missed a little bit of skin there, so I'll fix that up in a little while as well. But I'm just trying to create a highlight and a shadow area, and by doing that we're using a shadow color, a mid-tone color and a light color. There are a few other colors in between there just to help blend that transition out nice and smooth. So you can see even now around her eyes and her nose, she's starting to get a lot more depth and she's starting to look a little bit more 3D. So continuing to build up that color, we've got E00. We're just going over the top of that previous color and extending it further out. You can see as I'm adding on that color that the marker's actually sitting on top of the paper a little bit more this second round, and it's actually a lot easier to blend in as well, so there's not as much work needed to blend out those individual colors, and that's because we've done our previous layer to sort of lay down our base of that. So I'm coming in now. You can see that I'm missing certain areas. I'm making sure I leave those little highlight areas, so the sections on the cheeks there, just on top of the arm, anywhere where the light might reflect off those, and the light would reflect off them if they were a little bit further or closer towards you, so the closer they are towards you, the lighter that they would be. So I'm just coming in now with E000 to finish off the skin, smooth it all off, and just sort of get that transition between the light and the dark nice and smooth. She's got a lot of depth in there now, and I really like that because she's got her hood on. She's not going to have a lot of light on her face. She's covering it a lot, so I really did think that it needed to be a little bit darker. But once we start to put in the hair and the color of the hood and things like that, you'll notice that it really does soften off and lighten up a little bit. So I'm coming in with some R20 just to put in some blush in those cheek areas. So all I do is just flick that out towards the middle of the cheeks there, trying not to get a defined line because I want that nice and smooth and I want it to look natural as well. So I'm going to come over it with E000 just to blend that out nicely. I'm also putting it around the eyeshadow areas as well because it just creates a little bit more color in there. If you're going to put some eyeshadow on, then you would just use your eyeshadow color rather than the R20, but I really like the look of this and it sort of makes it more natural and pink. So I want the lips to look quite nice and natural, so I'm going to use some R22 here, just doing a couple of shadow areas on the sides of the lips, underneath the top lip and also on the bottom lip there as well. Most of the area is going to be covered up because it's a tiny little area. Being A5 size, there's not a lot of room to sort of work with that. I popped in some R20 and I still think it was sort of blended out too much, so I'm going to put some other color through there to just sort of brighten it up a little bit. I tried the RV23. Now you might have a play with these colors as well and might decide to do them a lot brighter or a lot softer, so it's up to you. Just play around with the colors and make sure you have a bit of a highlight and a light color, and I use my white gel pen or gouache to go in later on and just mark out those extra highlight areas just to give them that little bit more of a shine and sparkle. So just working on her beautiful eyes now, I decided to go with green. Green and red are complementary colours, and because we're going to use red in her hood, I've used some BG09 first for the shadow colours, but I'm really actually impressed with how the eyes came out. They really stand out and look really great against her hair and her cape. So I'm just using this on the top level of the eyes there, so you can see that I filled in those areas. If you're using the grayscale version, you would go over the grayscale part with this pen. So I've got BG05 and I'm spreading that color down and further out towards the bottom of the eye. So you can see now that the transition's quite smooth between the two colors, but we want that light middle section as well. So you can see I've left that tiny little section on the bottom there. I'm going to use some BG01 and just go over that. And I'm kind of just sort of dabbing in to the eyes to sort of bleed both and all the colors out. So it will desaturate those darker sections a little bit, but it's going to just make those bottom areas a little bit lighter and blend in nice and smooth. I'm using C1 to do some shadow areas in the whites of the eyes. So when I actually did the skin color, I made sure I left the little bits of whites on the side there because they're actually not marked in for you. So I just made sure that I did that. I'm using some zero colorless blender now just to blend off the line from that C1, and it just sort of makes it a little bit softer and it puts a little bit of color into those shadow areas of the whites of the eye as well. So they came out absolutely beautiful. I'm really impressed with the color, and once we start putting in more of that color around her, you'll start to see a lot of that. I'm using just the black marker now just to fill in that pupil area now, so that you know, it's nice and dark, and I'm going to come back in. I was going to leave the highlight section white, but I've decided I'm going to come back in later on with the white gel pen or the gouache and just fill that in. So the lips did wash out a little bit more now, so I'm using some R85 to go into the shadow areas and just increase the depth on those lips. Just blending that out slightly with the R22 again. So just created a little bit more depth in there and made them stand out that little bit more. So I'm just going to show you the highlights with the white gel pen. I may go over that with the gouache at the end and just overdo those highlights, or I may just keep them as the white gel pen. It depends if the color bleeds through or not. So usually by the end of the picture I can see if it has or not. But you can see by adding in those highlight areas, it makes them really look shiny and it makes them just stand off the page there. So now I've done the skin, I usually like to go to the hair next because it then just helps to make sure that I've got that central point of the picture organized and the colors are right and the skin tones right before I move on to the rest of the image. So I'm actually going to do her hair black, and I'm going to put in the highlight sections some red so that it sort of looks like the red from her cape is coming off into her hair. So I'm just starting to outline all these areas now with black, and I'm going to do some flicking motions out from the shadow area towards those highlighted areas just to create a little bit more texture through there. So you can see now with all of those lines put in, you can see already those highlight sections starting to be created. I'm coming in now with the red, so I've got R59, which is a nice burgundy red, and I'm just coming in and flicking out from those shadow areas towards those highlight areas. Now it doesn't really matter going over the black too much because the black doesn't really desaturate it all that much, even with this color over the top of it. So I'm just coming in over the top and flicking out. I'm not worrying about sort of blending off that black or anything like that because we want the texture lines through there. So just flicking out now with that R59. So I've chosen to go in now with some R46. So this is a mid-tone color. I wanted to not go much lighter than this because I didn't really want it to come out too pink. I really did want it red. So just sort of bringing this color in, and then I've got one more color over the top of this. And the next color I come over with sort of just really sort of, I guess, just blends off and softens off the red color a little bit. But I really liked how this color came out, and I really like that it looks kind of like she's got black or red hair. There's like a, you could see either there. And it really does make her eyes just pop out there. So now I'm starting to fill in all of the color around her face. Her face looks so smooth and rich, and there's so much depth and color in that. And then the eyes just sort of pop out. Sometimes I love it when you just sort of start to put things together and you can see things just sort of start to emerge, and things start to look more mesmerizing, I guess, and look more real, and I really love that part of the picture when it starts to pull together. So as I was saying earlier, I didn't want to make this too pink, so I've decided to go with some C3. So it's a coal grey, or cool grey, and I'm just coming over the top of all of that colour and just sort of flicking over the highlight sections. So I didn't, as I said, I didn't want to make it too pink, and I wanted to try and keep most of that colour in there if I could. So the C colour sort of just finishes get my words out there. It finishes off the image and it finishes off the hair nice and smooth, and it doesn't put too much more into it, which is what I kind of wanted. I wanted it left how it was. So coming back into it now, I'm going to start on the hood. Now there's a little bit of story when it comes to the hood, because I don't have a lot of deep red colors, so I wanted to make this nice and deep, and I have seen in a few places that you can actually use other colors underneath to darken them up. So I was going to use some like C9 to go into those shadow areas and do it up, but I've actually used this method before. I've used a dark green under it instead, because it actually makes it look a little bit more natural, and it makes those shadows really come together, especially with the red hair and things like that. Now you'll be surprised that green and red would change, or the color would change with the green underneath it, but it does. It makes it a lot more rich, and there's a lot more depth. So after doing this color, I decided it wasn't quite dark enough, and I really wanted some more depth in there. So we're going to bring in a green color in a moment and go back into these shadow areas, because I'm just not happy with how deep it was at this stage. So first of all, my marker's actually running out here. So lo and behold, that seems to always happen in every video. One marker seems to run out. So I thought to start with that might not have been dark enough because it was running out. So I will just refill my pen just to make sure that it wasn't that before I go and bring in that darker color. So you'll see that I'm adding extra lines in here as well, and making the artist drawn lines a little bit longer. So I'm trying to create some real nice folds and depth through those areas. So that's why I'm increasing them and adding extras in, just to make sure that we're getting plenty of the illusion of, you know, a folded material, and that it's bunching up around her neck and around the hood there. Just make sure that you get in between the flowers down here as well, because this will be all of the background behind this will be the red, because her cape is behind those flowers. So now I've decided that that definitely was not deep enough. It didn't look like a shadow area to me. It just looked like the red that I really wanted to use through the cape. So now I'm going to bring in some G09, and I'm going to repeat the whole area I've already done with this color. So I'm just going over the top of that red, and just deepening that up now, and then I will come back in with the 59 again. So you could probably skip the first layer and just go straight for the G09 if you wanted to, but look, building up that color helps with the depth anyway, so I'm not too stressed about it. So I'm just coming in over the top of all of the lines I've already done, and just extending this color out through the deepest parts of those shadow areas. So it almost looks black in some of those areas, but it's not. It's a real grey colour. So coming now over the top, now I want to extend this colour past that. And most of the area is now going to be filled up with this particular colour rather than the next lightest red, which is kind of a little bit more pink. So it did really put in the extra shadow and depth that I was looking for. And it really does blend in really nicely and look like it's more natural of a shadow than if I was to just sort of add cold grey or something in there where you're actually going to be able to see the grey tone underneath. This actually blends in nice and well. So I've almost finished laying down this colour. I'm going to bring that R46 in now and go over the remainder of the area. So of course I just said that I always run out of a marker. I actually run out of the R46 as well. So I will have to fill that up during the video as well. So now you can see there's some still white areas. I was going to use the R35, but it was too pink. So I'm swapping it over. I'm going to use some R14, which has kind of got a bit more of an orange tone in it. And I'm going to go over the remainder of the highlight sections. I may leave some sections white. You can do that because it will just give that little bit more of a light reflection. That's fine as well. I'm just coming in now to fill out the R14. So after considering for a little while what was missing, I've decided to come in with some R17. The colour's a little bit nicer, a little bit richer, and I'm just going over the top of all the areas I've already done. Now you can leave out the previous colour if you like, but I just found that it built it up anyway, so I'm not fussed at all. When it comes to putting colours underneath, it does sort of gradually build up and affect the final colour of it. So if you wanted it exactly the same, you could keep going and do the same, or you can just use the R17. So you can see now it's a little bit more red. I'm building up that colour. It doesn't look as pink as it did previously, so I'm actually a lot happier with that colour than I was previously. Also too, her hair stands out a little bit more now because it is a slightly different tone to what her hair was. So now that I've done that, I'm going to repeat the same process on the bow in the middle there. The bows on her hair, I'm going to make the same colour as her dress and her eyes, so it will bring it all in together in those sections. So you can see there it's starting to really come together. And now that I've finished the bow there, I've noticed that skin color underneath, so I'm just going to fill that out. So I started colouring her dress with some BG09. Again, the shadows weren't dark enough. You really want that contrast between the light and the dark, especially in these areas where her cape is covering most of that over, so you're not going to see a lot of colour in there anyway. In fact, if I was really looking at her in real life, that would probably be all just grey or dark coloured. I might see a tinge of colour through that, but because of the shadow on her, I probably wouldn't be able to see it at all. So anyway, I'm bringing in some C7 underneath that because I wanted that a little bit darker, but I don't want to change the colour of it too much. So just popping in now with the C7. So I filled in all of the shadow areas underneath the basket and the flowers there with that colour. I'm going to come back over now with the BG09. Now I just wanted to also apologise for my voice today, coming out of being quite sick, and I actually finished this image over a week ago, probably nearly 2 weeks ago, but because of my voice I just haven't had a chance to be able to record it, so I do apologize that it is still a little bit nasally, and it is getting better. After today though, I may need to stop talking for a couple of days again, but that's okay, as long as I get this video out for you. Hey, so just coming over the top of the grey now, extending this colour a little bit further out and filling out the remainder of the dress area now. I've just missed some of her cape underneath her basket, so I'm going to go in and fill that out now. Using the same colours as I did in the bow and the cape, starting with the G09, moving to R59, and then some R46 and some R17. So there's lots of little details coming up. We've got little flowers, we've got fruit, we've got the bushes behind, and we've also got the wolf as well. So these sort of bits did take me a lot more time, and they were a little bit more fiddly because they're a lot smaller. Just filling in the lighter areas here, BG07, just going over the top of all of that area. Just something a little bit lighter to contrast the darker green. So we're going to start on the flowers and berries and things like that now. So I'm going to swap and change between a few colours. I do try to put them all up on the screen, so if I do miss telling you, it should hopefully pop up there in a cap anyway, so you'll be able to rewind and have a look at that. But at the moment I'm just using a little bit of depth through these little they're kind of little round flower bunches. I'm using some V17 first in those areas, just dotting in the colour, so there'll be some white space between them. And just going back over the top of that with some V12 to fill out the white areas. So there's a little bit of depth through that, even though there's not a lot of detail. So I've got some YR23, which is kind of a really muted orange, and I'm just coming in and putting a little bit of this around on the wheat area and also on the bread and a couple of other sections there, maybe the carrots and the orange as well. Just going to finish off the orange and the carrot. I'm just going to use some YR04 and fill in the rest of the space that I didn't put in. I'm just kind of dabbing the colour in. I'm not sort of using lines or anything. I'm just kind of squishing that marker down into it to fill out the rest of the colour. It'll just sort of seep out into it. I've got some E31 and I'm going over the top of the bread and the wheat here and filling out the remainder of those areas. The reason that I wanted to put two colours through these instead of just doing one individual colour was just to help sort of give it some depth and some detail. Sometimes if we do it all one colour and don't put any depth into it, it doesn't look like it's got any shape or form. I really am losing my voice now, so not long left before the end of the video. I've got some E35, you can't see it very well there and I do apologise for that, E35, and I'm coming in and just filling out the remainder of that, and I'm just putting little dots in everywhere underneath all those shadow areas where the basket would be leaning over it as well, just to sort of put in that depth that I was just talking about. So I've got a jar of jam there. I'm just going to use some C7 to put in some shadows onto the silver lid. I've got markers everywhere by this stage. Sometimes I like to leave them out so that I can write them down to do the colour list later on, but sometimes I end up using so many colours they end up everywhere, but I will clean them up again in a moment. I've got some C5 to blend that out. So you can see that I'm just adding a little bit of shape, some light reflections on there. And then finishing that off with some C3. So that's the lid of the jar done. So we've got some berries, we've got flowers, we've got an apple there. So we've got lots of things to do still. That was some R46, and then we've got some R17 just going over the top. So just dotted in the R46 and then just gone back over that with this. So it kind of gives it a little bit of a watercolor effect. It bleeds the ink in towards each other instead of doing lines or streaks. I've got some BV08 and I'm going to go in and do the same thing. I'm just dabbing into these berries and marking out some of the shadow areas. So you're not going to be able to see a lot of it because it's such a tiny detail, but adding in some shadow overlapping the berries and things like that is going to help just sort of to bring it out a little bit more and put that detail in. Brought in some BV04 to go over the top of the highlighted areas. So just dabbing it in. Some of those areas I've left a couple of white spaces just to put a little bit more depth and shadow and highlight in there. Just doing the bows in her hair, the same colours that we've done in the dress there. I've got BG09. Just going into the shadow area. And some BG05. I'm going to use some Y38 for the middle sections of each of these daisy-like flowers. So I just missed some of the berries up the top here. I'm just filling that out now, BV08 and BV04. And I missed the other bow. I don't know how I missed it, but I missed it. I'm just filling that out. So I've got the BG09 and BG05. I'm just going to use some of the G09 now to do some of the leaves in these flowers down the bottom here. So just doing some of the grass that's up there and the leaves as well. I'm just sort of doing a line up and not putting a lot of detail in there. Just going to blend that out with a lighter green. So just adding in the details that I've missed there earlier with the red. I'm going to come back in and there's another sort of fluffy kind of flower thing. I'm just going to make that purple as well using BV04 and a little bit of C7 just to add some shadow in there as well. So using the C colors through your normal colors helps because if you don't want to put a whole lot of other colors through there, you can just use the C for shadow and things like that on the cooler tones, and then obviously the warmer tones you want to use the warm greys because they've got more of a pinky sort of tone to them, whereas the cool greys are more blue. So you got that Y38 again. I'm coming into all of these daisy petals and just putting a line out from the middle out towards the edge of the petal. So following along the artist line there where there's a line, I'm just coming out on those. So we're going to lighten up those flowers now with some Y15, so a little bit of a brighter yellow, just coming over the top of that previous colour and just blending over the rest of the flowers. Just using some YG13 over the darker green colour in these leaves now. Just blending them out nice and soft. And also YG13 is nice and bright, so it's just going to brighten those areas up down in the bottom corner here. So now I'm just making sure that I've got all of the details in the background part here. Filling it out with the cape, because there's little parts and sections behind there that would be actually red. They'd probably be the darker red, but it's not really going to make much difference through here. I'm just going to pop this colour in anyway. So just filling out the rest of these flowers in the YG13, I'm going to come back in with some G07 and just darken up the middle vein sections of these leaves as well. So I've almost finished this foreground section. I still have the basket, the apple and the blanket to do, but I'm started to fill out the background area already. So I'm going to come in and do some darker greens first using G29, and I'm kind of just doing the dabbing thing that I was saying that I did in the other front sections there, just sort of dabbing this colour in to make it look like the little blotches are going to look a little bit like leaves, I guess, because this is so in the background. You're not going to want to see a lot of that detail, but it's going to be quite dark because she's actually in the woods. So I wanted all of these sections to be quite dark. In the sky is coming through, so you'll be able to see the sky shining through there as well. So just sort of dabbing the marker in these areas of trees around her head and around in this background. So changing that G09 out for the G07 again, and going over the top of those previous dots and dabbing this color into the middle of those sections as well. So we're trying to sort of fill in the gaps now and put a little bit of light through there. So I've still left a few lighter areas. I've got G14 to come in and fill that out a little bit more. So now we'll be covering over most of the white. So just try to keep a little bit of texture through there by dabbing and leaving some little white spaces through there. So the stuff that I'm imagining to be a little bit lighter is either closest to the sun out in the back area, or it's closer to you in the foreground. So to show that she's in the deep woods, I'm going to put this yellow out here coming through the trees, so it's quite bright through there, just to create that illusion that she's actually quite deep in the forest there, and that the sun is way back there. Adding a little bit of YR02 now, just to give a little bit of a sunset or morning effect. So I'm quite happy with the leaves of those trees. I did miss a tiny little bit in between some trees up there. I'll fix that up in a moment. I'm going to do the trees, the further back ones a little bit darker than the closer up ones. So I'm going to fill those in. Also too, there's a little birdie there on the side. I just wanted to sort of make that stand out a little bit from the rest of the background as well. So now I've swapped out to grab the colours for those trees. I'm going to use some E79. So on these back ones, I'm going to pop this through. And on these closer trees, I'm just going to line out some of the details with the darker colour. So just coming in over the top of the artist drawn lines there and just marking some of these in. Some of them aren't exact, it's just a scribble on type look. You don't want them to look too uniform or too ordered. You want them kind of randomly over the tree. Okay, so we're going to use some E49 and just deepen up these darker areas at the back here and pop a little bit of I guess texture through these back trees as well. So it's a little bit darker than the E79. I've got some E77 and I'm just going to fill in some more details. I'm going to try and fill in the little birdie bit here, make that nice and bright, but the outer trees and area there I'm just making quite dark. I'm going to fill in the remainder of these sections around the trees, leaving still a little bit of white because we're going to put a little bit of E74 in there just to smooth over the whole area and get a little bit of light and dark going on in there as well. So just bringing in that E74 to finish off the remainder of the white areas in the tree. So we want to make sure they're nice and smooth now. Although saying that, there is texture through there because we've got our different coloured markers through there to create a little bit of depth and highlight through there. So all of the tree areas now should be filled out, and then we just got to fill out that little birdie on the left side, and we've got our woof, and we'll finish off our basket as well. not long to go now, so this one actually wasn't too bad. The length of time to finish it was quite quick. It's just putting it all together takes me a little bit longer, thinking of colours in between when I'm getting asked questions by children and they've got the TV on and things like that. I get a bit distracted, so it probably does take me a little bit longer when I'm sort of working on it myself. So you can see there, I was just showing you in the background there, that now the depth of it, it looks like there's a deep sort of curve around her because we've done it so dark towards the back area and we've made it really light at the front. So you can see the darker area at the back, and then you've got your light coming towards the front. So I wanted to make it look like that it was a little bit deeper, I guess, like a bit of a hollow where she's walked right into the woods, and hopefully I've achieved that by doing that dark color in the back and bringing it lighter as we go forward. So just filling out that little birdie in the middle there now. I've got some B04 and I'm just filling out the whole bird. I'm not going to put too much detail in here. I'm just kind of dabbing that color in there. I've got some E33 and I'm just coming around the bottom of the bird there. And I'm just going to put a brighter colour above the birdie there, so using that Y15 again, just to sort of lighten up that area. Perhaps there's a little bit of a hollow in the tree and it's coming through and shining onto the birdie there. So now we've got the wolf to do. I'm going to use some greys for the wolf. I'm going to use the W's. So we've used some cool greys already through there, but I wanted to use some warm greys through the wolf, so I'll get to that in a moment. The apple down the bottom here, I've got some R17, and of course I didn't move the picture up, did I? So you can't see it very well down there, but I'm not marking out the whole apple with just this colour. I want to put a bit of green in there as well, so just doing the top and bottom section and leaving a little section in the middle there to put some green through. So just coming back in now, I've got that YG13 again, just coming over the top of the previous colour there, right on the edges of it and extending this further out in towards the middle of the apple there. So we've got a little bit of a shine and we've also got a bit of green through there as well. Using some R14 just to finish that off around those areas. Just going over the top of the green, so we're slowly sort of gradually building in that green, but you can still see the green through that red. Just popping the white gel pen right in the middle there just to create that nice shiny section. Sort of brought that out like a little bit of a teardrop there just to extend it further around and make it look a little bit more shiny. So for the basket and the blanket, for the blanket I'm using the B17 just down the middle of each of these lines, and I'm going to use a C colour just to put in a little bit more shape on the opposite side of those lines. So coming across horizontally now, I'm using this C3 and I'm just going to follow underneath each of these lines. So I didn't want to put too much colour through there, I don't want to take away from the rest of the image. So using some of the colours that we used in the bread and the wheat, I'm using E35 to do some shadow areas on the basket here. So I'm just, to line out the shadow areas, I'm going underneath where all of the folds sort of overlap each other and also going on either side of the basket handle there just to create the middle section there to create the light through there, which will make it look rounded and curved. Going into all of the other areas of the basket to fill that out as well. Just going in and adding a little bit more texture and colour, I've got E55. Just lining on the edge there to darken that up a little bit. I've got some E31 now, just coming in and filling out the remainder areas there, putting in some light. I'm kind of lining it in to put a little bit of texture through there as well, so it's not just looking nice and smooth, because we want it to look rough. Putting a little bit more shadow colour in through there with that E35. So I really have to clean up my markers now. Coming into the wolf, I'm going to use some W9. I'm just going to use flicking motions out from all of the artist drawn lines towards the middle of each of these sections. Just flicking my marker out and creating some nice texture and fur through there. I'm going to build up on that now with W7, flicking out backwards and on the opposite side coming back towards it. So we're creating some nice texture through here, giving the effect or illusion of having fur. Swapping out now for the W5. And then finally we've got our W3, which I'm just finishing off these sections. To finish them off, I'm still using flicking motions, trying to sort of fill out the rest of the white area. So there still will be some white showing through, but most of it will be covered up now with this colour. I've just got a little bit of RV21 for the insides of the ears, and I put a little bit on the nose as well, just on where the little, what do you call them, whiskers will come out. I'm doing his eyes with R17. Could be a reflection from her cape, or it could just be his evil eyes. I've got my white gel pen there just to fill in some reflections there as well. It's not working. Looks like the edge of it had dried off a little bit, so just scribbling it on a page to get it to work. It's close to finishing, so the pen's a little bit harder to get to work sometimes. Putting a little bit of whiskers out there as well. You might want to use a pencil or a paintbrush with some gouache on it. I'm also putting some highlights on the lid and some areas around here that I want to be shiny or to look wet. Put some dots in the middle of the flowers. So we're really just sort of accentuating everything now, putting in this contrast to give just some more detail. It just makes the picture sometimes, putting in these little white highlights. Just having a look at where I could put a few more. I've popped a couple of little lines on the berries to make some of them look a little bit shiny. So overall, we're actually finished. So I hope you really enjoyed this one. It did take a little bit of extra time, but I think that putting in those extra details really does make the picture. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Don't forget to follow me on all of those social media links in the description below. If you want the book, check that out as well. So thank you so much for watching. I want to thank Lynn for these beautiful images, and also for sending me the review copies of these awesome books. This one and Maori Mermaids have been fantastic. I will be giving away the Princesses one at some stage. I just haven't had a chance to get that organized yet with being sick. So hopefully over the next couple of weeks I'll be able to figure out how I'm going to give that one away. So guys, thank you so much again, and I will see you next time.